Thank you for listening to the Bladder Battle Podcast special series, I See in the Dark. This series dives deep into the perplexing disease, interstitial cystitis. This podcast is intended to bring awareness and create conversation around the illness by providing possible remedies, tips for managing the disease, how you can show support, and so much more. This podcast is not intended to be a medical alternative for physician care, nor to treat, cure, or prevent any illness or disease. Always consult with a physician for professional medical advice. Today, we are talking all about mindfulness and meditation and how this type of practice can be beneficial for those living with interstitial cystitis. So joining me today is meditation teacher and author of Eating for IC, Rosey Sumrall, to enlighten us on this type of practice. So Rosey, thank you so much for joining me today on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you more about my book and also about meditation and how there's a huge connection between that and IC.
Absolutely. And I think it'll be a really great conversation and sort of help round out the podcast because I've gone through a lot of different topics, but one topic that I have not really hit on is meditation. So I'm very excited to dive into this with you. First, I kind of want to start it off, though, with your personal connection with interstitial cystitis or painful bladder syndrome. So kind of how old were you when you first started having symptoms, and what has your experience been like with healthcare practitioners and just kind of your journey in navigating this chronic illness?
I would say starting in my teenage years, I started having pelvic pain related to my periods. And I started seeing a doctor who assumed that I had endometriosis. So I went on various different birth control methods. Usually they made things worse. They could never really figure out what was going on. In my 20s, I had a laparoscopic surgery to clean out endometriosis. And my doctor told me in the post-op appointment, he said, the pathology came back, your results show inflammation and they don't show endometriosis. But I remember your surgery. I was in there, I took it out. You have endometriosis. So I just sort of continued and trusted him that he knew what he was talking about. He was my doctor for 10, 12 years. He was the one who delivered my children. So, I had a long relationship with him. So I just continued on, but nothing ever got better. That didn't help. As the years went on, the pain got worse and not better. So he said, I think we should do a hysterectomy.
Oh gosh. Wow.
Yeah. So I decided I wasn't going to actually do the hysterectomy with him because he was an OBGYN and he mostly just dealt with babies and birthing babies. So I found a new doctor, and she was actually a urogynecologist, and her practice is focused on people who have different pelvic pain disorders. So I went to her, sent all my notes and records. She did the hysterectomy. After she came out and talked to me and my husband, of course, I was under a lot of drugs and didn't understand anything, but she said, it looked like you had pretty bad endometriosis and also your bladder. We'll show you pictures and stuff when you come back. So I came back from my post-op and my pathology report showed no endometriosis, just inflammation. And this doctor said, okay, well, then you don't have endometriosis. She said, pathology reports are never wrong. You have just IC. And apparently they are so similar that I was being treated and all of the symptoms that I was having could be either endo or IC. And so that's why they were having a problem. So, I had to deal with the fact that I didn't actually need to have a hysterectomy, which was difficult.
Right.
But what it did is make me realize, okay, I need to focus all of my efforts on IC. So at that point, we changed treatment directions. I got on Elmeron. She took me off of regular birth control and put me on a bioidentical progesterone and amitriptyline. So I also started the IC diet. So all of that I started right after my surgery. And once I started on that treatment, things started to actually improve, which was wonderful. So I tried to figure out, what was the underlying condition, why did I get IC to begin with? So I saw a MD doctor her practice is kind of more naturopathic in Atlanta. And she did a ton of blood work, and it came back showing that I had inflammation markers, which, I already knew I had a problem with inflammation, but also that I had Lyme disease.
Oh, wow.
Which I hear a lot. Yeah, I hear a lot of people who have IC talking about Lyme disease, but I was positive for that. So I went on the course of antibiotics to clear it up. But, it didn't get rid of my pain. It was just, I guess, what had attacked my bladder to make it even worse. So, I saw a lot of different doctors, and I will say that finally finding my urogynecologist, she understood what I was going through. I think I visited a couple of doctors who didn't understand or who didn't have like the knowledge or the training to really be able to treat me. So finding a doctor who specializes in these kind of things, it makes a huge difference. So I go to her with everything now. But part of my journey, and probably one of the biggest parts of my journey, is dealing with the anxiety that developed because of having a chronic illness. Anxiety and stress, that's all leading to tension in the body. So I had to figure out a way to get that under control, because I didn't want to be medicated or have to take Xanax or something for a panic attack all the time. So I started looking into more of the alternative medicine route and how our mindset can affect our pain levels. And they really do go hand in hand. I also, with the IC diet, I was also doing low FODMAP diet at the same time, because I find that for me, when I have bloating or stomach issues, even though I don't have IBS, it actually affects my bladder pain. So the low FODMAP diet is just as hard to go through as the IC diet, but I'm doing both at the same time. So I created my Instagram page, Well and Zen, and it really was a way to sort of creatively release my emotions by taking food photography and talking about mindfulness and meditation at the same time, which kind of ended up changing my whole life, because I even now work for a company in Atlanta as a restaurant food photographer, not just healthy food, but, cheesy goodness food and stuff like that. So and my page has grown a lot, and I get to talk to people with IC. A lot of people will direct message me and talk about, how did you make this if I didn't write the recipe, or ask me about my journey. So it's been really great creating a community sort of around that page and checking in on each other and taking control of my diet, but at the same time providing support for other people. And of course, then turning that into the book, Eating for IC.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. Just creating this whole community, even after starting the podcast, I've met so many people and I've stayed in touch with all of my guests. And now I've created this own small network of people, but everyone is so willing to help. So I'm excited that now you're a part of that, because I really think that meditation is extremely powerful. And just like your story, mine is very similar. And in the way that I was, on medications and I wanted to kind of look at a more natural route. So I am in the middle of that right now in learning how to take a more natural approach in controlling my anxiety. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about meditation and kind of how you became a meditation teacher?
Sure. So when I was in the beginning dealing with the pain and I would be stuck in bed in a flare, I noticed that I was feeling very out of control of my life and anxious and stressed out. The only thing that I could do was find meditation to help me calm those thoughts down. So what ended up happening, I started meditating every day, and then I actually found Reiki and I became a Reiki master, as well as doing pranic healing. And I found another little ritual called Ho'oponopono, which I'll talk about later. So I just started kind of working on my healing process and my journey every day. Then I got a certificate for being a meditation teacher, and that just really helped me even dive deeper into my own growth and my healing. I'm actually working on another book called From Panicked to Peaceful. And I'm talking a lot in that about my journey, but different meditation techniques that you can use to, for IC, it's perfect because I talk a lot about the releasing tension and stress, but there's a lot of different breathing techniques and things in there that are just going to be really helpful. And they've helped me a great deal. And really my goal is to help other people who have chronic pain or chronic anxiety to deal with everything in a healthy way and sort of stop thinking about like the doom and gloom side of things and switch over to gratitude, because that has been a big impact on my pain levels.
Our whole mindset is a huge factor in how we can move forward. And if we have a negative outlook and a negative mindset, which is very easy to fall into with chronic pain illnesses, we're just going to kind of stay in that vicious circle. So I really love what you're doing. And I think it's so important to teach not only people with chronic illnesses, not only people with IC, but just everyone, especially during a time like now, to really change your mindset and try to be more positive, because what you put out there in the universe, you'll get back. So can you kind of go in a little bit deeper into meditation and kind of some of the techniques that you teach and guide, especially those with IC? What are some of those techniques? And I know you had a couple things listed in your book, Eating for IC, as well. So why don't you kind of go in depth with that?
Right. I did put that at the beginning of the book because I feel like I can't just submit recipes. I need to try to help people and guide them on this journey of spiritual growth as well as healing. So there are a couple of strategies I have that have helped me and I do every day. The first one is a breath work exercise. Basically, you're just going to use a simple counted slow breath of intervals of 3, 3, 3, 3. And it helps you bring you back to the moment, especially if you're in the middle of an anxiety attack or if you're in a pain flare. This is a great way to calm yourself down. So what you do is you just take a breath in through the nose and into your belly and let it rise. And you do that just slowly counting 1, 2, 3, and you just feel it as your abdomen rises up. And you're going to hold your breath for 3 seconds and then release the breath fully out for 3 seconds and then hold for another 3 seconds. So you just use this same pattern and repeat it. I would say at least 3 times, but if you could do it for a couple minutes, then it helps to really bring you back to where you are right now in the present moment, help you to release your tension and pay attention to what your body's saying. So breath work is a great thing to look into this practice, but there's so many different techniques out there that you can use for breath work. Another thing is journaling your feelings, which I find is really helpful for me because when I get into a state of overwhelm or anxiety, I have a lot of thoughts going on in my head and they're just kind of swirling around, and especially around pain and feeling out of control. Once I start writing it down, then I can get to the bottom of what I'm feeling that day. So, I personally don't use a physical journal. I just digital journal it, and I put it either in my notes on my phone or just in a Word document. And I'll just write it out. I'm feeling guilty because I can't go out and play with my kids right now. I'm stuck in bed. Or I feel overwhelmed, like I have no control over my life. Writing that down puts it out there, and then it allows me to verbalize how I'm feeling to other people. So I can go to my husband and say, I feel really upset about this. Like, yeah, I'm not feeling good, but also is this whole other thing that I need your help with. And then it allows him to be able to help me. And then you can choose to keep it around or just delete it. And often I'll just get rid of it because I don't necessarily have to look back on that. Once I get it out there, then I can feel what I'm feeling fully and then let it go. So it's really, really helpful, I think, for anyone with anxiety or pain. That feels overwhelming.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so it's wonderful. And then there's another practice called Ho'oponopono, which I had mentioned before, and it's a Hawaiian practice around forgiveness of yourself. And that forgiveness of yourself is actually going to help every part of your life. So it's very simple. You just repeat a phrase in your mind, or you can say it out loud. It's just, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. And when I'm stuck in a place where I feel overwhelmed or stressed out, then I just sit quietly and repeat these phrases over and over again, and I start feeling better very, very quickly. I can release my tension. Sometimes I will say my name in it. So I'll say, I'm sorry, Rosey. Please forgive me, Rosey. I love you, Rosey. Thank you, Rosey. I feel like everything really is inside of ourselves. So when we're holding tension and anger and pain, all these things are in us and we need to forgive ourselves. And this practice it's a beautiful way to just release it. And you don't have to have a lot of emotion behind your words. You don't have to mean it right away. But over time, you'll start to actually feel like I feel like I'm really sorry, and please forgive me, and I love you so much, and thank you, and that just makes it even more powerful of a ritual because you really have that feeling driving it underneath it. So it's something that I do every day, and sometimes even is in a background loop playing in my mind. I love it. My last technique that I want to share is gratitude. It's what I write about a lot on my page, and it's definitely the most important of all of these techniques, especially in the moments when we're feeling overwhelmed and there isn't anything to be grateful for in our life. Those are the moments that, it may be hard to think about what you're grateful for, but that's the moment we need to think about it. And I know that's difficult to hear, but it can help change everything. So when I'm in a pain flare, what I'll do is I'll stop and I'll think, wow, I'm so grateful for my body, for my home, for my job, for my family. And then I'll start to think about my future and what my future looks like. So for someone dealing with a pain flare, that could be a life where you're out playing with your kids, or you're doing things, eating food you couldn't eat. You have no restrictions. You have no pain. You're just living your life. So I like to visualize my future self, who is just, in perfect health and living an amazing life. And I am grateful for that person. And it's sort of similar to The Secret, where, the books and the movies where you're visualizing your future and that helps to make it manifest. I agree with those, but I think that the part that is the most important in that is that you are grateful for that future, not just visualizing it. I don't think it necessarily really works if you don't have that portion of it inside of it. So, you can do it around your health. You can do it around your, financial situation, around finding the love of your life, whatever it is. You just need to sit and be grateful for your future self, as well as grateful in the moment for what is happening in your life. Even if you feel overwhelmed, or even if you're feeling pain, it doesn't matter. You need to sit down and really think about what you're grateful for and focus on that instead. So those 4 practices are things that I do every day, and they have been so beneficial to my life. I recommend everybody do them.
I've actually recently started doing the breathing technique. So for me, anytime I feel stressed out or anxious, which happens to be, driving, or scenarios which are, kind of intense, and I need to pay attention and not feel stressed. So I'll actually practice that even while I'm driving, and it'll calm me down in a matter of minutes. So that's a really great strategy for people who experience extreme anxiety that really takes hold of your life. That's a great way to kind of snap yourself out of it pretty quickly. And it's good to practice it regularly, to get your breathing more regular. And you don't want to do that rapid, breathing that'll just make it worse and make you kind of hyperventilate, and it's not good for our bodies. So that's definitely a great tactic.
Yeah.
Before we get more into your book that you recently released on Amazon, I kind of just want you to define mindfulness for us, because I think we hear this word a lot, especially now more than ever. And I'm not really sure that people really understand what mindfulness means. So I'd love to kind of get your take on it, and how one should really look at what that means in their life.
It's a term that is so broad, and it's being used a lot. It's just, it's hashtagged on everything right now. But mindfulness to me is all about being mindful of myself in this moment. So not thinking about the future and the what ifs that come, thinking about, what could happen if this happens, or if this person says this, or if I lose my job or whatever, and not thinking about the past either. Because I know a lot of people, and I get stuck in this routine too. We think about our past traumatic experiences, our suffering from the past, and we let that overwhelm us in the present moment. So being mindful is about this moment, and not about what happened to you before, and not about what could happen to you in the future. It's about going through this moment right now and paying full attention to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think it's incredibly important, especially with those of us who have IC, because one of the biggest fears, and one of the things that really contributes to our anxiety, is worrying about when is our next flare. When will it come? How will it come? Will it be because I ate something? Will it be because I exercised and I did something wrong, a wrong movement that agitated my pelvic floor? Will it be from stress? And then it just creates this vicious cycle. So really that whole being present and understanding where you're at now, and being grateful for where you're at now, and not worrying about whether, it will trigger a bladder flare, or if you will be in pain, or if you will wake up feeling sick tomorrow. It's just about enjoy your life now, enjoy your moment now, because we have very few of them, and we really need to appreciate where we're at right now.
Yes. And I like to think about it. You can always get through this moment right now, no matter what's happening. Even if you're in a pain flare and you're feeling bad, in this moment right now, you can get through it. But when you tack on the future what ifs of what if it gets worse? What if I have to go to the hospital? What if, my medication doesn't work or whatever? When you start adding that up, that's when you can't handle the situation. Or you think about last time when you had a pain flare and because you accidentally ate chocolate and it was the worst pain flare you've ever had or whatever. When you're tacking those on to this moment, then you can't handle it. Then it gets overwhelming. But if you stop thinking about those and you just say, okay, in this moment right now, I can handle this moment, then we're changing our thought process. And I think it has a huge impact on me. Where I am now, when I have a pain flare, it doesn't look anything like what it used to look like for me. It's short-lived, it's mild. I can go about my day normally afterwards. But when I'm in the middle of it and it hurts, if I'm sitting there thinking about all of the pain flares of my past that have been extreme and how it could go back to that and I could be living like I was then I'm creating this cycle and making things worse. You have to focus on right now and being grateful right now.
Absolutely. I definitely couldn't agree more with you there. It's really important. And kind of going off of triggers and what to eat and what not to eat, let's get into your book, Eating for IC. I really enjoyed it. I actually, just glancing through all the recipes, it really made me go, wow, there's so much that we can eat. So if anyone ever feels limited, definitely check out her book, because it will make you realize and just open your eyes to the amount of ingredients that you can try and that maybe won't cause a flare for you. Certain things affect others differently. And I think we all understand that dealing with IC, it's a lot of trial and error.
Right.
But just given that, there's a lot of recipes in there. So that was pretty exciting to see and just kind of eye-opening, because I'm a very visual person. So scrolling through something, I'm like, wow, this is incredible. So let's kind of get into sort of your motivation behind developing some of those recipes, and then just kind of your tips and strategies also that you have around following the IC diet. Like, what are your do's and don'ts there?
For me, I'll talk about my tips first, actually, because it is important, like you touched on. Some of the things in the book may not work for some people. Everybody is different. So the IC diet for me has been life-changing, and the low FODMAP diet for me has been life-changing, because I can live a relatively normal life when I stick to those foods. But even though it's a guide and you're not ever allowed to have certain things, there are things on there that you need to test, and they may actually be okay for you, or some things that aren't on the diets that you can't have. Like, I can't have gluten, and I don't eat refined sugar because they cause me problems. But alternatively, I can eat a little bit of lime. I can't have lemon, but I'm fine with lime. Or sometimes having a salad dressing with apple cider vinegar for me doesn't always cause me a problem. I can even have low acid coffee because I've tested it many times and I'm okay with that. But, I have, in addition to the regular rest of the restrictions, I can't have anything really with sugar in it. So, that restriction is pretty difficult. But in my book, this is why I wanted to create it, is because there's so much you can do with food that you don't realize. Sometimes it seems like everything is really bland. We can't have spicy food. We can't have tomato-based products. And so that, eliminates Italian food and a lot of Mexican foods. And it's just like so many restrictions. So for me, it's like, well, if I'm going to be eating a plain baked potato, that is so boring. I don't really want to eat that. So I started making it visually appealing, and I started adding, add some green onion to that and add some turkey bacon bits to that, or some mozzarella cheese and, put something on the side, like have one of the recipes in my book is grilled romaine lettuce, which is like, you never really think about that, but it's delicious. And if you just try it, like I promise you're going to love it.
That one caught my eye. That definitely caught my eye. I was like, grilled romaine? Like I love grilled vegetables. So I definitely have to try that because your picture looked beautiful too.
It's so delicious when you just try to make your plate visually appealing. It really makes the diet a lot more manageable. So it all goes back to starting my Instagram account and taking control of my diet and making my food look beautiful. And over the years of doing it, I have created recipes that I go to pretty often. And those are the ones that are in that book. I'm constantly making all of those things in there. So I know that they taste good. And I know that other people with IC, that they'll benefit from them. So what ended up happening was I wanted to put it all in a book and be able to offer that to people. And I was going to just do an ebook. And then Amazon just makes self-publishing super easy. So I just went ahead and did that as well. But
that's awesome.
It's kind of become like a really big part of my life. Not only is my diet restrictions, that's a huge part of my life, sure, but I've made it into so much more than that at this point. It makes me look forward to eating an oatmeal bowl. You know what I mean? Make it really pretty instead of it just being plain. So yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for a few years and it just made sense to put it all into one book.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm very into nutrition and food. But I even struggle. I've been vegetarian for 8 years and super healthy. And I love to, I'm a videographer by trade. So I love to photograph my food and all of this. And so when I was diagnosed with this, I'm like, no tomato, no spicy. All I'm left with is garlic. Like this can't be, and I kind of struggled with it. I really struggled with it. And I'm still trying to figure it out. It's hard. And it's hard, especially when you have your other half and they can eat everything. And you're like, how do I supplement this? So just looking at all your recipes, I was like, this is going to be so great and so helpful to me because, I'm pretty newly diagnosed with IC. So it kind of made me go, what can I eat now? Like all of my old recipes need to go out the window, especially because I used to love spicy food. So I was stumped. It wasn't an easy thing to navigate by any means. So I think that's great that you took your own experiences and your own recipes and you decided to publish it because I think that's just so helpful. And, it's great on Amazon. So many people are Prime members. So many people use Amazon. So, it's very accessible there. It's awesome that you took the time to do that because it obviously took you a long time to put this together, being that it's 68 pages.
Right.
So it's amazing. One last thing that I kind of want to dive into is in the very beginning of your book, after it says, why the IC diet, because we kind of touched on that.
Right.
But your IC diet tips, there's a couple things that you have listed out for people that, whether they're maybe going somewhere for a get together or they're going out to eat. Can you kind of run through some of those tips? You don't have to list all of them because obviously you want to leave people wanting to know more. But maybe if you could just list a few things to really think about when it comes to food.
The number one thing is, I think, being willing to just bring your own food to places. My family is really big into sports and my kids are constantly playing sports. And so we have get-togethers where, people want to go out to restaurants, or we go to someone's house and have a barbecue, or even family functions, when you have a potluck and a bunch of stuff that you can't eat, and it's very overwhelming. I think my number one thing is that just bring your own food and plan ahead. At this point, I will just bring a container of something like chicken with potatoes or broccoli or pasta, the pesto pasta that I have in the book or something like that. And that way I'm going and I'm there with everyone. I don't have to avoid it. And then I can just say honestly, I appreciate that you put the effort into making this, but I can't eat it. And I brought my own food. I know in my family, there are a lot of people who are like a hostess in their heart, and they want to make the food for you. And that's something that they get joy out of. But, just tell them, like, I appreciate you so much. And this is beautiful, and my family's going to eat it and they're going to love it. But I brought my own food. And it's just kind of empowering to yourself that you don't have to say, well, we're going to an event and I'm going to end up being in a pain flare because I'm going to have to eat the food that's there. No, you don't have to. You can bring your own food,
No, that's great.
And people at this point know that about me. I'm very open and honest. And one thing that's not in the book is with alcohol. Same thing. If I go out and I'm with, friends and they all want to order a margarita, and I just say, no, thanks. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really have to go into something. I don't have to apologize and say, oh, I'm sorry that I can't have that with you. Because there's nothing to be sorry about. I'm doing it for me. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's changing your mindset around that kind of environment to just say, I have my own salad dressing and that's fine. I'm going to bring it to a restaurant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's kind of stressful to go into those situations and then you feel like you're being rude, and you don't want to be rude to your family. You don't want to be rude to your friends. But what I have found is with being more empowered and really taking ownership of that and going, no, I can't cheat. No, I can't eat this. And it's not because I want to be rude to you. It's because I got to take care of myself. People will really respect that. And I have found such a turnaround in my friends and my family just understanding that, and even being able to go out to dinner with them and go,
right,
hey, do you want to split something? Let me know what you can eat.
Yeah.
And I'll eat anything, and it's just a nice change. It's like the tables have turned, and so it's really good advice, really becoming empowered and knowing that like it doesn't have a reflection on who you are as a person. It's just part of you now, and people can respect that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, before we wrap it up, do you have any other advice or strategies or tips for people with IC?
Yeah, I would say it's not just about medication and treatments from your doctor. And it's not, on the other side, it's not only about meditation and alternative healing. You have to have a mixture of both. And when you mix both together, then I think you're going to find that you'll heal so much faster than if you're just going one side or the other side. So my tip is, have a mixture, go to acupuncture if you think that's going to help. Do yoga if you think that's going to help, but also listen to your doctor. Take the medications if it's going to help you. So doing a mixture, it doesn't have to be on one side or the other.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more with that as well. And that is the approach that I have taken and has really helped me. Don't be afraid to try medication. And I'm not a huge advocate for pharmaceuticals myself, and I've spoken out about it on the show before, but I was on one and it was extremely beneficial when I took it. And I was able to find other ways to help myself and wean off of it. So, it's good. It's really good to have that hybrid. So, Well, thank you, Rosey, very much. I really appreciate your time and being able to pick your brain about mindfulness and meditation. So thank you again for joining me on the show. And if you just want to let our listeners know exactly where they can find your book and remind them of your Instagram handle as well.
Thank you so much for having me. And the Instagram page is Well and Zen. And the book is Eating for IC, and it's available ebook and paperback on Amazon.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I also want to thank my audience for taking the time to listen to the Bladder Battle Podcast special series, I See in the Dark. Make sure to subscribe if you're listening on YouTube, or leave a rating or review on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcast. And stay tuned for the next episode right here on the Bladder Battle Podcast.